Welcome to the Peak of Geek, where we've hit the top but with no plans to stop. When I was a kid, there was nothing quite like the weekend, especially Saturday. Even as an adult, there's something kind of magical about that day. For many of us, it's still the one day a week where we're free to do whatever we want. And when I was a kid, for 2 hours every Saturday afternoon, you could find me eyes glued to the television set watching the animated adventures of my favorite cartoon characters on the Disney afternoon. At least here in Canada, Disney Afternoon was a 2-hour block of cartoon adventures featuring familiar and brand new characters if you grew up on Disney movies and shorts. For the other Canadians out there, you might remember Mike Sobel, who acted as host if you watched Disney Afternoon on ITV. Just seeing this guy's face and those cardboard cutouts in the background brings back so many memories for me. And while I enjoyed some of the earlier Disney Afternoon cartoons, like The Adventures of the Gummy Bears and DuckTales, my personal favorites were Darkwing Duck and TaleSpin. While Darkwing Duck had a familiar face in the form of Launchpad McQuack from DuckTales, TaleSpin featured all new characters. Or wait, did it actually? Alright, most Disney fans probably know this by now, but there was a way too long period when I was a kid where I had no idea that the characters from TaleSpin were lifted directly from Disney's 1967 animated classic, The Jungle Book. Even though The Jungle Book was one of those classics I owned and rewatched on VHS, I guess in my mind, it wasn't exactly uncommon to see a bumbling, talking bear in a Disney production, what with Little John and Robin Hood, and to a lesser degree, that fisherman bear on the island of Naboombu in Bedknobs and Broomsticks. You'd think I would have realized some similarities since it wasn't just Baloo, whose name and characteristics were exactly the same, but hey, I was a dumb kid. But yes, the inspiration here is clear. Main characters Baloo the bear, Shere Khan the tiger, and King Louie the orangutan are all borrowed and expanded upon from their origins in the Jungle Book. Unlike the earlier Disney Afternoon cartoons like DuckTales and Chip and Dale, where you could conceivably believe that Donald Duck joined the Navy to better support his nephews while going on adventures with Uncle Scrooge, and you could argue that in between causing mischief, Chip and Dale would throw on some clothes and solve mysteries, there's no way TaleSpin could be a sequel to the characters found in the Jungle Book. Even today, I find this such a wild and almost unbelievable concept. Of all the Disney movies to base a series around, why The Jungle Book? Why take those characters and change them to fit this updated setting? For those who don't know or don't remember, TaleSpin follows Baloo's misadventures as a cargo pilot in the town of Cape Suzette. Along with his sidekick and navigator Kit Cloudkicker, they make deliveries for a company called Hire for Hire and their new boss, Rebecca Cunningham. They often have to contend with a gang of sky pirates led by Don Carnage, who are the primary villains of the series. Shere Khan is a wealthy business owner who sometimes acts as a villain but also as an ally depending on the episode, while Louie has been stripped of his crown and now owns a nightclub called Louie's Place. In arguably the biggest departure from the source material from a character perspective, Louie and Baloo are best friends in TaleSpin, which is a stark departure from their more antagonistic relationship in the Jungle Book. But how did we even get here? Why did Baloo decide to abandon the bare necessities and become a pilot? Well, for that, we actually have Launchpad McQuack to thank. And let's be honest, it makes total sense that he would be the Nick Fury cinematic universe link between these multiple Disney cartoons, since he's easily the greatest new character by far. He's such a lovable goofball, and there's no denying he should be in more things. I know he was in the recent DuckTales reboot, but this guy should have his own series. Bring back Launchpad, you cowards. Anyway, the beginnings of TaleSpin started with Disney wanting another cartoon to add to the Disney Afternoon programming block. Co-creators Jim McGaughan and Mark Zaslav were in a major time crunch to deliver a new concept. They knew Launchpad's addition to the Duck World as a pilot in DuckTales was popular, so they started with that. And since the Jungle Book had been recently re-released into theaters, the creators latched on to the Baloo character as someone who could lead his own series, so he became the bumbling pilot. A big part of why he's a successful character in the Jungle Book is primarily due to his interactions with Mowgli the man-cub. In both interpretations of his character, Baloo is at his core a lazy drifter with a good heart, so he needs someone like Mowgli to care for and inspire him to take more responsibility. Hence, Kit Cloudkicker was included to create a similar father-son dynamic. As the show began to take shape, some animators at Disney refused to work on TaleSpin because they thought the show would ruin the legacy of the Jungle Book, while future fans would eventually go on to argue that Baloo and the others actually had more depth and character development when compared to the source material. If you think about it step by step, it almost starts to make sense. But the weirdest part of TaleSpin's creation isn't the Jungle Book origins, it's another even stranger inspiration. One that came from a sitcom of all places. A sitcom that kids probably weren't watching at the time. For the ones out there who missed this one, Cheers was a massively popular sitcom that ran for 11 seasons throughout the 80s and the 90s. It's set at the bar of the same name and features a group of Boston locals who form relationships while having a few drinks at a place where everyone knows your name. Ted Danson starred as bar owner and head bartender Sam Malone, and in season 6, Kirstie Alley would debut as Rebecca Howe, Sam's new boss, to create a new will they won't they relationship for Ted Danson. Not only did this relationship inspire Baloo's own with Rebecca, hence the borrowed name, there's definitely some similar chemistry as well. I mean, as much chemistry as one can expect between two cartoon bears in a children's television show. Okay, so the initial ingredients and inspiration for this show absolutely came from unexpected places. But despite all that, TaleSpin was a hit. When it started airing in the early 90s, TaleSpin ran for one season of 65 episodes, and like other Disney afternoon cartoons, it would continue in syndication for a long time afterwards. I felt like TaleSpin was always on TV, and it was one of those Disney afternoon cartoons alongside Darkwing Duck, DuckTales, and Goof Troop that I would drop everything to watch, even if I'd seen the episode multiple times. And just like those other shows, TaleSpin started off with a bang. Over the course of 4 episodes that were also broadcast together as a 90-minute long movie called Plunder and Lightning, we're introduced to all the characters, including the ones borrowed from the Jungle Book and the new ones too, including Rebecca's daughter Molly and my boy Wildcat, the Sea Duck's mechanic. This guy totally feels like TaleSpin's launchpad in that he seems unreliable at first glance, but he's a genius where it counts and always comes through in a pinch. Plunder and Lightning expertly sets up this series and actually stands as a pretty strong movie on its own. However, the episode I remember most was one called The Old Man and the Sea Duck. When Baloo takes a shortcut during a cargo run, he hits his head and loses his memory, including how to fly. Baloo emergency lands on an island where he must get his memory back or he won't be able to get home, since to leave means pulling off a pretty risky flying maneuver. Fortunately, an old pilot lives on the island and agrees to help Baloo remember why he's so great. After some training and a few mishaps, Baloo finally takes to the sky and makes it past the tricky part. His memory soon returns, and when he gets home, he feels grateful and wants to thank the old man. But here's the kicker. That old man was a famous pilot, and he's been dead for 20 years. Sure enough, when Baloo returns to the island, everything that looked brand new to Baloo and the audience before is now old, broken, and run down. So what happened? Did a ghost help Baloo remember how to fly? While this story idea feels a bit tired these days and owes quite a lot to science fiction shows like The Twilight Zone, as a kid, this blew my tiny mind. And it stuck with me all these years later. But honestly, I loved every episode. From the catchy theme song to the colorful animation and all the fun and interesting characters, there was a lot to love with TaleSpin. Looking back though, one of the main reasons I love this show is in retrospect super weird. Stay with me here, but a major reason why I tuned in every week to catch TaleSpin had to do with Back to the Future. Wait, what? Okay, Back to the Future is an incredible film. There's no denying that. When I was a kid, it would play on cable television all the time. I remember watching Marty McFly use his skateboard, or in part 2 his hoverboard, to get around Hill Valley while holding onto the back of vehicles was the coolest thing. I remember wanting to learn to skateboard just so I could be like Marty McFly. While most of my friends wanted to learn to skateboard so they could pull off sweet tricks like Tony Hawk, I just wanted to hold on to the back of cars. Obviously, this was a dangerous and stupid idea, and thankfully I could barely balance on a skateboard, let alone work up the nerve to hold on to someone's vehicle. Just saying, don't do this. But wait, I hear you say, what could this possibly have to do with TaleSpin? Well, in my young brain, I thought Kit Cloudkicker was Marty McFly levels of cool thanks to his ability to cloud surf while hanging onto the back of the plane. Just like Marty McFly skateboarding while holding onto the back of a vehicle. Right? Of course, since Kit is holding onto the back of a plane, it's probably more like wakeboarding or whatever. I mean, it's sort of similar, right? Not really? Is it just me? It's definitely just me. Anyway, TaleSpin was awesome, and so was Baloo's plane, the Sea Duck. And when I got the toys of Baloo and his Sea Duck for Christmas one year, I was over the moon. I played with that toy every chance I got. And when Easter rolled around a few months later, I added to my collection. You see, my family would typically give my sister and I one toy to find along with all the traditional chocolates hidden around the house. I still remember the sheer joy at finding Kit Cloudkicker hidden underneath the couch, next to an arrow of chocolate eggs pointing the way. Yes, my parents were adorable. But the expansion of TaleSpin out of the small screen and into my life was only just beginning. In 1993, we got the Sega Game Gear, so we could play games in color, while unnecessarily draining 6 AA batteries in about 4 hours. I know it's too late now, but for what it's worth, I'm sorry, environment. Alongside Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and Aladdin, we also had TaleSpin. No, not the far superior scrolling shooter from Capcom. This one was a more traditional platformer where you play as Baloo or Kit trying to collect all the cargo boxes in each level. I remember struggling to find some of the well-hidden boxes while jamming out to that first level music. Oh, and look at Kit flail all his limbs when he jumps. What a cool guy. At the same time, I could find even more adventures featuring Baloo and his pals in the pages of Disney Adventures, a monthly mini magazine I collected and adored as a kid. These little digests were instantly recognizable in supermarket checkout lines due to the covers that typically featured a Disney cartoon character alongside a popular celebrity of the time. Inside, you'd find tons of articles about Disney properties, including movies, TV shows, and theme parks, along with celebrity interviews, other articles that covered sports, animals, and science, with a little bit of everything in between, and a few little games. But the highlight every month for me were the comics. Sometimes these were original stories that seemed like they were created specifically for the magazine. I remember loving Kid Blastoff and this one about Mickey's Toontown. But many of them featured the familiar faces from the Disney afternoon, with comics based on DuckTales, Chip and Dale, Darkwing Duck, and TaleSpin. Some of these were multi-part adventures that ended on cliffhangers, so I made sure we never missed an issue. TaleSpin even spun off into its own comic book series outside of Disney Adventures, for a total of 11 issues. I remember owning one of the Cartoon Tales reprints as a kid, and my copy was lovingly worn due to multiple rereads. These days, TaleSpin's legacy continues to live on. Not only can you watch the whole series on Disney+, it continues to be slyly referenced every now and then. We would get to see a pseudo-sequel of sorts in the 2017 DuckTales reboot, which had episodes featuring Don Carnage, commercials for Hire starring Baloo, and grown-up versions of Kit Cloudkicker and Molly Cunningham, Rebecca's daughter. Then, in 2022, the super weird Chip and Dale reboot movie, which owes a lot to Who Framed Roger Rabbit with the way it mixes together live-action, hand-drawn animation, and CGI animation, acts as a meta-movie where fictional characters live alongside humans. Baloo the Bear, in his CGI incarnation from Jon Favreau's live-action Jungle Book remake of the 1967 cartoon original, includes nods to his days as part of the Disney afternoon. Outside of Disney, the cast of TaleSpin, much like other Disney characters and many, many other pop culture favorites, would find itself parodied for a very adult audience on Robot Chicken. This is definitely not for kids, more so for the grown-up kid at heart. In 2023, it began to surface online that some sort of TaleSpin reboot was in the works. But who knows if we'll ever see it. Personally, I'd prefer something that pays tribute to the original cartoon, instead of something that goes in a more unpredictable direction like the Chip and Dale movie. The Disney afternoon holds a special place in the hearts of all of us kids who grew up in the 90s. In fact, in 2017, a Disney Afternoon collection hit consoles and PCs, which included all the Capcom-developed Nintendo games based on DuckTales, Chip and Dale, Darkwing Duck, and TaleSpin. And I'm so glad that TaleSpin, along with almost every other Disney Afternoon cartoon, is available to watch on Disney Plus for new generations of kids or adults to discover and fall in love with. Not sure why Schnookums and Meat isn't on there. Maybe because it was Disney's edgy cartoon attempt to mimic Ren and Stimpy. Either way, there's no excuse for the Aladdin TV series not to be there. I mean, Return of Jafar is on there, and that kind of kicked off the show. And King of Thieves, which sort of acted as the show's finale, is also on there. But why not the show? Come on, Disney, everything should be on there. Well, mostly everything. But what about you? Did you grow up watching the Disney Afternoon? Have you watched any of those 90s era cartoons on Disney Plus? Let me know all about it down in the comments below. And until next time, typically I can separate a remake or reboot from the original, but every now and then something comes along like the Chip and Dale movie. While it was fine and inoffensive for the most part, I will never forget the nightmare fuel that is Gadget and Zipper's children. Hey, hope you're having a super awesome day. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much, and I'll see you real soon.